All right, Rob. But now, so you've won money on pretty much all of these, and as you were just scraping the surface off there, from what I've read in The Gambler, the things you're betting on appear to be more crooked than a race in a Dick Francis novel. Now, we've all seen where somebody will start singing and Simon Cowell will say, stop, change the song. We can all see that that's really contrived. But as you were talking about in the first bit, that some of it was, they would go to quite some lengths, wouldn't they, to try and put the vote in public onto somebody rather than somebody else. So was most of your betting done at the beginning, and then were you sort of trading in and out in running when you realised what was going on? I mean, what was your strategy?
Yeah, there was some online betting. You could get money down at that time, but focusing heavily on the Betfair exchange in running. That was always a lot of fun with X Factor in particular, because they had two shows. And the Sunday night results show, when you'd have the bottom two announced and then you'd have the sing-off, and it was an incredible time because, like I've written about in the book, in The Gambler, you could latch onto some fantastic value bets. Jedward in X Factor was one of those instances, because I could tell that Simon Cowell wanted them to continue in the show because they were generating huge coverage, and all that sort of coverage is oxygen for the show. Millions were tuning in each week, and Cowell knew that by criticising them, he was actually generating a bigger vote, which is what he wanted. But incredibly, in terms of elimination, you could lay them probably around evens for about four or 5 weeks, I think it was. And then there was the notorious sing-off that I write about in The Gambler, when they end up in the bottom two up against Lucy Jones, who was really highly rated in the show, one of the front runners to win. And they went long odds on to be eliminated, but I was laying them because I just thought Cowell's gonna fix this for Jedward to survive, because obviously the judges decide and then they can take it to deadlock, and whoever's lower on the vote, the public vote, gets eliminated. And I decided that Jedward would survive on deadlock, and that's exactly what happened. So yeah, that was a huge win.
I can't even remember. I assumed that Jedward must have won it because everybody remember. I don't remember anybody else in that competition. But then I wasn't a massive fan of the show. But then I wasn't making loads of money on it. So yeah. I mean, when I read the book, I was thinking, oh blimey, yeah. When you sort of read what you say about zooming in on judges all standing up applauding, or somebody looking bored, or whatever. So ultimately, I mean, when the public have the ultimate decision, you have to double guess the public. But
absolutely, yeah.
So how many times when you were on something did you realise that you were being absolutely stitched up? Or I suppose they wanted the best in the end. They wanted the best performers to be the winner.
Yeah, totally. They wanted the best to win, the one who had the best chance of successful recording career. And again, you could identify those acts that they were pushing more for the win. Very similar set of circumstances on Strictly, but Strictly wasn't quite as blatant as Psycho was back in those days. And I remember, Little Mix was another good one, because the perceived wisdom was that a group could never win X Factor, because One Direction didn't win, JLS didn't win, so it was sort of what chance a girl group, but something very appealing about them, I thought, to the British public and the way that they were selling them on the show. And yeah, that was one where I was able to get on at very big odds on Little Mix winning X Factor because they were written off really at the outset.
And all those ones you mentioned, they've gone on to massive success, haven't they? So why do you think it was that they weren't winning the X Factor rather than when going on to do what they did?
The main issue was that a lot of the girl bands on the show were really just kind of treated like live show fodder, really, made up too provocatively, unappealing to a Saturday night primetime audience. But what they did with Little Mix was they pitched them as these really cute teenage girls, and you could see that they were really going to town, trying to introduce them to the audience. I remember it was one of their VTs, and they were singled out, you know, and where they were from in the UK, almost a rallying call for people in those regions of the UK to get voting for them. But even come the final, there was an element of doubt. I think they're up against Marcus Collins, solo male, when it came down to the final two. And I think if you look back at the voting figures, it was pretty close, because Psycho would always release the voting figures at the end of the series run. And yeah, I mean that was a big win, but yeah, it wasn't a comfortable victory by any means.
Now, you mentioned at the beginning that the demographic for like Strictly Come Dancing would have been sort of Middle England, but that would have been a bit different for X Factor, or would it be the same sort of people?
Yeah, there's a key difference sort of between BBC and ITV. BBC, I always think, you know, they're almost Telegraph reading, home counties. They'll often favour a very sort of clean-cut, middle-class white guy. You know, we had a run of those kind of winners on Strictly that were very easy to identify. People like Tom Chambers, Harry Judd. And actually the show would have to go out of its way sometimes to kill off a popular male in that sort of bracket, because they don't want you know, a man winning every single series. So in some of those years, you could see how they were totally pushing for a female to win, and very cleverly getting rid of the males who represented the biggest threat.
It's absolutely ruthless, isn't it? I mean, there's people's dreams and hopes for the future being totally, I suppose it's their show, they can do what they like. But so in the, you know, like talk about betting. So you're using bookmakers and betting exchanges at the time. What sort of money were you able to get on, and did you want to get on? I mean, were you sort of up into the thousands at that point, or? Absolutely,
yeah. Just thinking back to Little Mix, that was, I mean, I think I won a 5-figure amount on them, but you know, when you're backing them initially at over 90, getting them matched over 90 on Betfair, it was quite easy to kind of build up a substantial green. And yeah, some of the vintage Strictly series, again, you know, very comfortable 4-figure profits, and you sometimes have some incredible elimination bets that you know, came up in running. Again, in the Gambler, I think I write about Aston Marigold when he was eliminated on Strictly. He was one of the front runners to win the show, but it looked to my eye like they were intentionally stitching him up. And then I was able to get, I think, 50 to 1, because they do, you know, live in running elimination odds with some of the online firms. And yeah, Aston got his marching orders.
Do you know how big you were in respect to the other major players at the time, punting size-wise?
I don't think I was betting on as big a scale as some of the other TV betting shrewdies out there. I mean, I know for a fact, for instance, Daniel Gould, yeah, he went to Eurovision with a 6-figure bank to invest, and I wasn't quite on that scale.
So, I mean, there's all you guys out there that have really got it sussed out. You've got the facts, you've got the figures, you've got the mindset, you've worked out what they're doing, and you're all betting to quite big size. There must have been enough people there just having a fiver on to watch the programme for you lot to snaffle up. I mean, how long did that last for?
It's difficult to remember now, but they were the glory years of TV betting, because there was liquidity on Betfair, and you could get the money down online or on the high street even. I wouldn't be afraid to walk to the betting shop to try.
Like literally walk to the betting shops to get the money on.
Yeah, or drive. Sometimes, yeah. I think there was about a 40-mile drive one time to get some Eurovision bets down, which again is in the Gambler. So yeah, I mean there were some big players operating in TV betting, but things have changed a lot now. We've gone through a sort of an evolution, and there's a lot more clued up people now, and maybe not quite the opportunities there once were.
Now, given that it sounds like these heats were the bentest you could have possibly ever sort of bet on, and they'd all been warned off if they were racehorse trainers. Two questions. The first one, how leak-free do you think the actual voting process was? Was word getting out before voting had ended? And two, would you actually believe the result of the votes? Would they be that low that they would... I don't want you to incriminate yourself here, but hypothetically, would you 100% think it would be 100% fair when it got down to the nitty-gritty? Would you trust it?
Yeah, I think the BBC have got a very good track record over the years, not just with Strictly, and I think those markets are clean. Sports Personality of the Year, something that I trade throughout the year, take very seriously. I've never seen anything suspicious on those markets, so I think well done to the BBC for keeping everything under lock and key. ITV, like I said before, they would release the voting figures at the end of the series, which was actually very useful to take into the following year, because you'd possibly learn one or two things about what was going on there when you saw the breakdown of the sort of the weekly percentages and so on. So generally, I think it's leak-free. I would like to think. I must obviously get me out of here. I think maybe there's some suspicious activity sometimes on that show, which makes me less reticent to get involved. But it might have something to do with the fact that it's being filmed in Australia, and there's people out there who are probably a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of the upcoming edit. And I know, the Aussies love a punt, don't they? So you've probably got a sound engineer with his Betfair screen open, piling in.
Surely not.